Now think about some examples where we are consciously associating sound to something.
Like the Discord thing.
The Discord things, okay. Yeah. Music? Yeah. Anything else that you associate sound with consciously? Childhood memories. Give me an example.
The song we heard in older movies or such kind of.
Right. And you think you're consciously associated with that. That's I have an example for a subconscious sound that I associate with. Ice cream truck sound. How many of you? Yeah. You call it kulfi, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How many of you associate that? Like even if you hear a bell ring somewhere, you think about that sometime. Or here's another good one. School bells. Whenever a period ends or when lunchtime starts. How many of you remember that?
Yeah.
Yeah? So see, these are the subconscious memories that, we associate sound with. Right. So what we are trying to, I guess, the important point we are trying to drive through here is, we as human beings, we place a lot of emphasis on sound. Take this room for example, or even a IIT typical classroom, right? How do you guys assimilate knowledge from your professors? It's primarily through sound. They are speaking and you guys are hearing. And it's through hearing that you assimilate all of that knowledge, you internalize it, and later on, they give you homeworks and everything, sure. But how far does that go? Like if I were to give you a book on electrical engineering or computer science programming and tell you to read through it and come up with answers and solutions for it, how many of you will you be able to do it? And how many of you will have a better success rate? If someone, for example, a friend, 2 days before your exam, a friend sits with you and just goes through all of the subject courses with you and orally just explains it to you. Which one works better, the book or your friend telling you? Why is that?
Because we can ask him questions.
You can't ask a professor a question. You're paying money to him, to the school. You think you can't ask a professor a question?
Compared to the book.
Oh, yeah, compared to the book. Yeah, that's true.
Your friend knows your level of understanding.
Right. Why is that?
Because there's a relationship.
Yes,
The friend knows
there's a
you.
relationship with your friend. Right? Because if the same thing with the professor, unless you develop a relationship with him, I don't think you'll be comfortable asking him all the questions. How many of you are afraid, if I ask a question in the middle of the class with the professor, others might judge, my peers might judge, or like, oh, I don't know if it's a silly question, I don't know how people will look at me. How many of you have felt that way? I have. I'm going to be very honest, I have. And I've missed a lot of opportunities feeling that way, honestly. Sometimes? Yeah.
Depends on how the professor reacts and how the people around you react.
Right, yeah. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, so we as humans, we place a lot of emphasis on hearing, and on top of hearing, there is also the relationship aspect that plays a big role in that. What do you think about it?
Well, thank you, Karthik. So through the hearing process, we're also able to create that relationship that Karthik was talking about. There's the opportunity to even know something about somebody well before you get the chance to meet in person. I mean, let's think of maybe your favorite, let's say, entertainment or sports idols, or people that you really respect in your field that you haven't had the opportunity to personally meet. Well, chances are you know their names already. You know a little bit about their background if that's somebody that you admire. And it all came through hearing, and you're starting to form an impression and even the bud of a relationship, at least from your side, even if you never meet these people. So just by hearing, it's affecting our emotional outlook, and that has, it's a very powerful force that can carry us in a certain trajectory. Now, one thing that I want to also frame this conversation around is the theme for this year is the spiritualist journey. So we're obviously going to be taking this concept of hearing and bringing it back to, well, what does that mean for us as spiritualists on this particular journey? So hearing not only has the power to influence our emotional state, our relationships, taking us to places near or far away from where we physically are just through the power of our mind. It has the ability to influence what comes out of our mouths, so the hearing influences the speaking. Now, this process of hearing also can act as an insulating factor. So how many of us walk around with earbuds or headphones around? Yeah. So one way to look at that is you are no longer connecting with the, let's say, audio of the larger world around you. You are creating a little bit of a bubble for a certain mood or feeling to carry. So let's say you're in, let's say, well, I guess the neighborhood a few blocks south is not, well, no, maybe like half a mile south is not the greatest, but you bring, let's say, very different kinds of sound vibrations with you. Then which one are you going to more strongly identify with? The nature of, let's say, your physical surroundings or that kind of space that you're creating around you? So it's kind of like a sound bubble that you're creating. So the other thing is that that insulating factor can also work to our detriment. It could stop us from absorbing the larger world around us, the opportunities around us, so that you don't know what you don't know and you don't know what you miss kind of a situation.
Right. For example, once I was walking with my headphones and I did not realize that a car was honking and I was supposed to stop. I just walked. I was literally jaywalking. I thought the road was clear or whatever. That was a close call, but you can be very oblivious to your surroundings, and that's the power of music and sound, right? Like you just go into the zone and you just start enjoying the music, that you just go into an autopilot mode sometimes. Have you guys ever felt that? Yeah. So do you guys think being in that autopilot mode is a great idea or not? Sometimes? Depends. Like,
What are you doing?
Once a while you need to be in that autopilot mode.
Yeah.
okay.
So for example, you brush your teeth every day.
Okay.
If you keep focusing on brushing your teeth every day,
Okay.
your mind is going to get tired. So that is why this autopilot comes from your mind. That it makes thinking simpler for you.
Makes thinking simpler. Okay.
Autopilot removes all the confusion and all useless thoughts many times. Like if you're doing something repetitive on one day, you just do it on autopilot. And you're not focusing on useless thoughts, you're just doing it.
Okay.
Using autopilot for a short-term goal is okay, but for long-term, it loses control over you. You lose control over it.
Well, that goes against what he said. Brushing tooth is a long-term goal. Don't you think so?
So I mean, it depends on the task. Right?
It depends on the task. Yeah.
If it's a monotonous, repetitive task, then having autopilot is kind of good because you don't need to always keep thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, this autopilot also applies to other tasks. So if you keep doing something again and again,
Right.
so you tend to go into that autopilot mode,
Mhm.
and it's not always productive.
Yeah. Fair. You have something?
Apologize if I fumble and framing my answer while I'm speaking. Like when you go through a traumatic experience or when you're going through a low phase of life, you need something to lean on. It's when autopilot comes out to be very useful.
Hmm.
Like to immediately lean on after a
Okay.
very deepening emotional scar or something like that.
That's an interesting point. Yeah.
So you're seeing autopilot as a way to kind of cope or manage
Yes.
short term when there are these large.
Basically, to distract yourself from a haunting emotional experience
Mm.
or something like that.
Okay. Now to take this concept of autopilot back to the idea of hearing. So there are many times where we hear something just for the sake of sound in the background. There are times when we're making conscious choices of what we hear. And one of the hopeful takeaways of this session is just to consider that we can make conscious choices for the kinds of inputs that go into our minds through our ears, because the input affects the output. One simple example, how many of us have a song stuck in our head right now? Okay. For those of you that raise their hands, you don't have to sing, don't worry. how many of you find yourself humming it after some time or singing it after some time? Yeah. Okay, so that's a simple example. The input churn in the mind became an output. Now, in a more dramatic fashion, somebody that grows up in a household where there's lots of verbal abuse, shouting, fighting, that input tends to become the output in that individual. And so we can extrapolate however we like that the sound that comes through our ears affects how we speak, the kinds of sound that we make. So the two of hearing and speaking are very much interconnected.
Yeah, and to add on to that, it's not easy for us to suddenly just be aware of it and make a drastic change, right? Like, okay, say someone, give me an example of how sound is going to impact you.
I didn't notice that somebody was trying to, I was crossing the street when a car was coming. They honked and said some unkind words to me.
Right. So, okay, you know what? That happened to me. Now let me just take my example then. You know how I felt after that? I felt like I was beating myself down. Like, how could you be so ignorant? Like, how could you do something like that? And, I was just going into this endless loop in my head, how things could have gone bad and all those things. But, so you see, that is also a sound. Like, of course, I'm not putting it out there. But, I keep hearing my voice internally saying, what, you could have done better, you should have known better, etc., etc., etc. Now, I'm being very critical on myself. I mean, for rightful reasons. But, sometimes we can be too hard on ourselves, right? And that has a negative impact. So the first step to that is, see when that happens and pause and just tell yourself it's okay. And that's the positive affirmations that you give yourselves. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is it's a practice. How to consciously use sound in a positive manner. And there is actually a video we have to kind of show how that works. If technology helps us. You have a password?
We need your thumb. Well, just a question. I mean, I guess we're going to be showing a video, so you all probably know the answer. But prior to 5 seconds ago, how many of us think that sound has a tangible effect on our bodies? How many of us thought, no way, sound doesn't affect bodies? Okay.
Here's the next question. How many of you think that sound affects your mental health?
Okay.
Okay, so more people think sound affects you mentally than physically.
No, physically.
But the amount of people who raise their hands.
Oh, that's right. Down. Oh man, I can't do this. Has anyone seen this already? Some, yes, okay.
You're not even green. You look rotten. Are you really even alive? I like you the way you are. Seeing you blossom makes me happy. You're making a difference in the world. You are beautiful.
I brought them here to see the plant. I was like, a plant is getting bullied. Like, it's not normal. I think it's an excellent project. To have something tangible that I can actually physically be a part of is, I think, going to be very powerful.
As the weeks passed, I started noticing that the one that was being bullied started kind of to droop.
being complimented, it was flourishing and beautiful. It's raised the profile massively of different forms of bullying and the effects that bullying can have on people.
What do you think about that?
Surprise?
How many of us have ever said an unkind word to somebody? How many of us have ever received an unkind word?
Because I said unkind.
Do you identify with the plant when you receive an unkind word? The one that was on our left, the one that died a little bit. And then when somebody says something kind, a little more like the plant on the right. So words sound, what comes out of our mouths, what reaches our ears, has an incredibly powerful impact on our well-being. And so in one way, that's something that we can all do to try to not just make ourselves more like the plants on the right, but also to help others be more like the plants on the right. And so that ties to the, so that this is all within the realm of what we'll call the material idea of sound, the material concept of sound. So the rules governing this world around us. Now let's take some of these ideas that we've presented here and take it to the realm of spiritual sound. Would you like to start that one?
Sure, yeah. Well, before that, how many of you get bored of a song? Yeah? Right, me too. Well, that's the nature of it. You know, it gets repetitive, the words get repetitive after a point, and you know, you know the whole lyrics, you know the beat, and after that, it just loses its charm. And you have to take a break from it for maybe 2-3 months, and then you listen to it, and then you start vibing to it again. Right? Yeah, I've felt that sometimes. Now, that is the stark distinction between what he mentioned as material sound and what we're talking about now, which is spiritual sound. Most of you guys have been with us throughout the most part of the semester, right? Yeah. You guys know how we do that kirtan at the very end? Has anyone got bored of it yet? Why is that? I mean, we'll still give you food even if you say yes, okay? I'm just telling it right now. No judgments here. But, I mean, I haven't. I've been listening to that, 5 years? And he's much longer than me. And I don't think both of us have gotten bored of it. Why do you think that is? Yeah, vibrations, right. All of this ties together. And the very fact how we establish right now that sound carries intention to it, it has an impact on our psyche and everything, applies to it as well. So the spiritual sounds, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and Vedic scriptures and Vedic mantras and everything, they have certain potency in them that, you know, invokes a certain emotion. For example, how many of you feel very good when you go into the temple? Right? You know the feeling, right? Now, how do you feel when you walk into a bar? Okay, for people who don't know, bar is where they play loud music. Feels very different, right? I mean, of course, people enjoy that too, but it's not the same feeling that you get. You know, you're more agitated when you're at the bar, but at the temple you feel much more calm, composed. So that's the difference between the material sound and the spiritual sound.
There's also a big difference in, so there's a verse that talks about how with the spiritual sound, the name and the named are non-different. So when we're saying Hare Krishna, and we're saying Krishna, Krishna is actually present in the form of his name. And so we can chant that, we can sing it, and it doesn't get tired, we don't get bored of it, because the nature of spirit is it's always fresh, it's eternal. Versus if we say, water, 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 water.
I'll be more thirsty at the end of it.
You'll be more thirsty. So there's a difference between the word water and the object water. And it also have you ever done this exercise? I know when I was little I would do this sometimes. I would repeat a word over and over, and then it would just start to lose all meaning. It would just start to sound strange. You have that experience? Or Okay, thank you. I don't feel so alone. And so the nature of anything material is that there's a period where it's fresh, and then it immediately starts to degrade. It's like a car. As soon as you drive it off the lot, it loses half its value. That's the case with anything material. But with spirit, it not only maintains its freshness, it increases in the joy that we can realize with it, in the depth of understanding that we can realize it. So it's a complete opposite trajectory of what we could call the material or the kind of everyday sound that we can experience.
Now, on that note, we actually have an exercise for you guys to do. Not right now, but it's going to be over the span of 2 weeks. And according to him, whoever actually does the exercise and reports back to him gets a free sweet before the semester ends.
A special sweet.
Special sweet. Everything is free. Yeah, I forgot. So I guess the experiment is every day in the morning when you get up and you refresh yourself and you're ready for the day, before you start your day, chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra for a few times on the beads. Ideally on the beads, 108 times. That's what one complete, I guess, so-called round is. But how much ever you are comfortable with, whatever, I guess, your day allows you to, and your limitations are, depending on that. So do that for 2 weeks and see if there are any visible changes, both in your mental health and the way you tackle your day and how your day moves on. And you know what? Note it down somewhere, or just make a mental note of it. I mean, I keep telling myself I'll make a mental note and I forget it the very next hour. So, maybe write it down somewhere. We all have our smart devices with us. It doesn't take long to open the notes section and just put something in real quick, right? So try doing that exercise and see how it feels. And tell him after 2 weeks, not me.
Well, because one of the concepts that you may find, and this is meant to be an experiment, of what a day looks like when we don't, let's say, carry that layer of protection versus a day looks like when we carry that layer of protection. So what's going into our ears, how it's coming out through our speech, our sound. Because when we bring on spiritual sound into our everyday lives, a few things happen. One is, I think last week we were talking about the growth mindset, right? How many of us were there for that? Okay, some of us, not everyone. So one of the key points was that when we're going through our everyday activities, but we lose sight of that spiritual path, there are more and more layers that cover our true identity, which is that of souls full of knowledge, full of happiness, and eternal. But as soon as we start to align ourselves more with a spiritual conception, not necessarily that our activities change, just our consciousness invested in those activities changes, then those layers become fewer and fewer, and it's much easier to approach the day in a calm, level-headed way. Things just seem to kind of fall in place. We are able to more easily, not completely, but more easily, right-size things in their place. And so that's the influence of a spiritual conception of life, that we can see everything in relation to for what it is. This is my long-term goal, my long-term vision. These are the events that I'm experiencing, and I'll pay attention to them as needed, but this is not my complete life. This is not the reason for my existence. Does that make sense? Okay.
Well, you know what? I have a question for you. We have been talking about sound for a long, long time, like for the last 30 minutes. So what do we actually do with that spiritual sound? Like, how do we receive that spiritual sound? Like, how do you distinguish between, so-called material sound and spiritual sound? And, okay, I receive it from someone. What do I do with it? Now, how do I internalize it? How do I understand its full potential and meaning?
Okay. Well, that brings us to the title. Great segue. The title to today's discussion, which is The Tube, the Parrot, and the Teacher. So we are going to first start with the tube concept. Okay. So to illustrate the tube concept, Karthik, could you help me out by drawing out a tube, please? Could you draw a tube, please?
Oh, you meant a tube. Okay.
Yes. No, that's not a tube. What are you drawing?
This is a square.
Yes, I asked for a tube. So this is the tube mentality. What is spoken goes in one ear and out the other. A pipe. So,
I like this.
so we could be hearing, but it could just be going straight through. So it's not enough to just get these different sounds that are supportive of our spiritualist journey. It's not enough just to get the sound in if it's just going out.
Does it remind you of any other topic that we just talked about a few minutes back? Sorry? Thanks. That's the autopilot one. You see? It happens, right? How many of you have been on autopilot and your friend says something and it just goes right through and you're like, huh? What did you say again? How many of you have done that? I do that with my wife every day. That's the downside of autopilot sometimes, because the other person who you're interacting with or the environment that you're in might not necessarily know that you are operating on autopilot. They might actually think, oh, you know what, this person's right here with me, he's listening to me and he's paying attention to me. But our mind will be somewhere there playing some tune like dun, 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 something like that. Yeah? So, autopilot is not always great. It has its place. But do we always use it in its place? Probably not.
Now, one thing that several weeks ago that Mohit was talking about the importance of the guides on the spiritual journey. Now, the tube mentality can be dangerous because if we're determined to go on the spiritualist journey, the guide's role in that journey is to support us, make us aware of potential pitfalls, give us ideas of landmarks along the way. So if we're not retaining it, we're just stuck in, this is what I want to do, thank you very much, gone. Where does that leave us? What happens? Well, maybe a more tangible example. How many of us have ever been lost and had to ask for directions?
He's talking about before Google Maps, just so you guys know.
Or in spite of Google Maps. Yes. So what happens if you receive the directions? Do you forget them right away? No. Some yes, some no. But if you forget them right away, you remain just as lost as before, right? Same thing, except the implications are much greater than maybe a few minutes late for wherever it was you were trying to get to.
On the flip side, we also have this thing called the intelligent tube. Want to take a gander or guess on what the intelligent tube is? An attentive person. Okay.
Well, let's hold the idea that the tube means still
just
in one
goes
and out
in
the other.
Yeah.
Take the useful things and not take the useful things. The useful things will go out. Useful things will stay.
Even useless things will go out.
Useless things.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's exactly it. So, for example, say you're paying attention to someone and someone just says, hey, you know what, you should jump off the Eiffel Tower. I'm like, oh yeah, you're right, yeah, I'm going to jump off. Not going to work, right? Same thing. So, that is where you apply your intelligence. How we talked about last week, there is the mind, intelligence, and the soul. So, that's where you use your intelligence, which you acquire through knowledge from listening to people or studying on your own. A lot of ways to acquire knowledge. But once you get that, you apply it, you internalize it, you understand that knowledge, and you apply it in scenarios where someone asks you to jump off Eiffel Tower. That's where your intelligence helps you distinguish between, this is good for me and not good for me. And if your intelligence is not sharp enough, you're going to end up making a decision that's not so favorable for you. So that's why knowledge is pretty important.
Maybe we should move on to the parrot.
Oh yeah.
Any questions about the tube before we go on to the parrot? How many of us have a rough idea of what the parrot might be?
It just repeats what it says.
Oh yeah, good job. You should come here. Yeah, so to explain the parrot, I have a very funny story, which I think 4 years back when I was there, another person told me this. So I'm going to try to repeat it as accurately as possible. So there is this guru, like a typical Babaji from India. Imagine him, okay? And he's sitting on a bull, and he has like 10 followers behind him, and they're all following behind him, okay? And they have all packed up lunch, and the lunch is on the back of the bull. So while walking, something falls down, and I think his kamandalu falls down. I think that's what it's called, right? Okay, yeah. So that falls down, and no one notices it. Okay, at least the guru doesn't notice it, but some of the disciples do. But they just keep walking along. Nothing. They don't do anything. After a while, one of the lunch boxes fall down. No one says anything. And all the lunch boxes fall down. No one says anything. And now it's lunchtime. Now the guru is pretty hungry. Okay, and he gets down the bull and he sees there's no lunch anywhere left, and his kamandalu is also missing because he wants to wash his hands. Hygiene is important. Okay, so he asks his disciple, "Hey, what happened? Where are the lunches?" "Oh, it fell down long way back." "Why didn't you pick it up?" "Well, when we joined, you said unless the guru tells you something, you don't do it. So you didn't tell us to pick it up, so we didn't pick it up." "Are you guys serious? Like, what are you talking about? So what are we going to eat?" "We don't know. You have to tell you. You are the guru. You have to tell us." So he's like, okay, you know what? These guys are a little subpar than the actual disciples that he takes. So he being a kind person, he's like, you know what? From now on, whatever falls down from the buffalo, you guys take it. Oh. Wow. You guys have a pretty sharp mind.
You're probably right.
Yeah, you're probably right. But we will go with it just for the heck of it, right? So now he also has a stick. So walks along for a while, and it's evening time. Now the bull, it had a good feast because it found grass and everything. It had its share, and it decided to, drop some dung along the way. Now the disciple, one of them, he was like, "Oh, you know what? Guru said pick up everything that falls down." So he picked it up and he carried along with him all the way. So once they enter the ashram, he goes to the guru like, "Oh, what should I do with this? Where did you get this?" "Oh, the bull dropped it." "Why did you pick it up?" "Because you told us to pick up everything that fell down." So that's when he said no more disciples. The guru. But you see what the parrot mentality is, right? You just follow everything to the T. You don't apply your intelligence. This is a classic example of jump from the Eiffel Tower thing. So you don't apply your intelligence at all, and you just do whatever is told. Now, do you guys think that's great? I mean, of course, it's not great because all of you laughed and you figured out what it was. But why do you think it's not great?
The uniqueness, the individuality of a person is missing.
Yeah, that's right. There is no you anymore, right?
What else?
What else?
Bad decisions, like if someone's making a bad decision, you just follow along and see the practice.
Right. Anything else? Yeah.
If everything is spoon-fed by the guru, then there will be no space for yourself to present something to what you are doing.
Yeah. Well, let's go one level more, right? So let's look at the whole concept of it. You just following something blindly. This can lead to, just development of faith in the wrong directions. And even if you have faith in something, it'll be very superficial. Because, the disciples, when the guru said, pick up everything, they did not understand the essence behind that instruction, right? What was the essence behind it? Pick up something that's useful, right? If something that's of valuable fell down, pick it up. But they failed to recognize that key part, and they just followed it to the T. So that's when the faith, and if you do the same thing with respect to spirituality, say, some person comes here and says, this religion is great, you should follow this. I'm like, yeah, you said it's great, I'm going to follow it. So how deep is your faith? How deep is your understanding and all of that? Not much. It's not going to help you when it's when it's actually tested. You don't know how to respond. Like you didn't go deep in it.
That's one of the leading causes of atheism, is just blind follower adherence to a ritual just because it's always been done that way. Like, how many of us grew up in a home where there were certain, let's say, rituals or traditions? Maybe you asked why we do this. You got a response possibly of, it's a family tradition, this is just how we do it. How many have gotten answers like that in life? And what was your reaction when you'd get a response like that? Like,
Either just follow it blindly or just skip it.
okay, either follow it blindly or skip it.
I questioned it.
What happened?
I didn't get any convincing answer, but I did my part.
Okay.
One would lose faith from that whole process, because when I do not get the answer for why I'm doing this particular ritual, if I do not get the reason for it, then I might as well not do it, because I do not believe it anymore. So the faith is what is questioned.
Yeah, because it's natural. We gravitate to concepts, to things that we hold as superior. And if we are, let's say, forced to do something that we don't see as satisfying either intellectually or spiritually or whatever it might be, then naturally the first chance we get, we're not going to do it. So that's why this is a whole spiritual process is based on both the head and the heart. That there's driven by very real feelings of connection with God and on this spiritual journey, but our intellect also needs to be satisfied, or else the journey is not going to last.
Well, I think that's a good segue to the last part, just the teacher. Once you.
So the teacher, we already looked at the tube, we looked at the parrot, and now we're going to look at the teacher. And the way that we're going to frame up the idea of the teacher, the word is acharya. It's a word most of us here are familiar with. Okay, how many of us know what it means? Someone want to give a definition for acharya?
It's basically like the teacher who has acquired the knowledge passed down from the discipline succession. Like it's there's more you can add, but that's the first part that came.
Okay. That's part of it. Who can help Girish out?
Acharya is someone who learns from his acharya.
Okay.
It's knowledge passed on. And through his acharan. Mostly. Acharan means behavior.
Okay. That's an important point. Did you want to add?
With this spiritual teacher.
Okay. Well, it's a little bit more than that. And you had added a nice point, Narinder, if you wanted to add something.
That's what I was saying, that Acharya is someone who does not say it blindly or without any whimsical things, but just whatever he's saying, he just follow it through his behavior.
Okay, yes. So there's received understanding, it's internalized and applied in that person's life. So it's a teacher who teaches by example as well as by word. And so how that connects to this whole topic is, when we hear these topics that are supporting us in the spiritualist journey, the onus is on us to be able to do that level of internalization and just consider, I have a very unique situation. All of us have unique situations. How can I apply this in either a very small way or a very great way into my life to at least realize that benefit? Because what happens is, as soon as we start to hear and then act according to that hearing, few things happen. One is, we usually get more questions, because deeper understanding usually leads to more refined questions, to get more refined understanding for more refined application. The other thing that happens is our faith starts to develop more, and that faith can be the fuel to continue on this spiritualist journey. Because if the faith is not growing, it's diminishing. And when it's diminishing, that just is an indicator that we need to do a little bit of checking on the inputs that are going into the process. Because this is a very scientific process. There are clear inputs. There's a process for what is an input that is favorable or supportive of the journey, and there are inputs that are not favorable. And there's that 2-week challenge just to see for yourselves what it looks like when you try to manage those inputs in a very conscious way. You want to answer?
Yeah, sure. All the points you said about the teacher, I guess here in America they usually call it walk the talk. You know, you would probably find more faith and more belief in someone who is following the practice that they're actually preaching. You know, if I were to tell you, you know what, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra is great, I've been practicing this, blah, 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 and I just go on and I go on my own way and do something else, you probably will not have any faith in whatever the words I say, right? I mean, of course, I'm practicing just as you guys. I'm not claiming to be a pro or anything, but there is a certain level of honesty and also genuineness that comes from me when I say that, you know what, I'm practicing this, I'm saying it works for me, and you can give it a shot too. So that's honestly what we are trying to say, and that's what a teacher does as well. An additional role of the teacher is that, remember how we spoke in the beginning about how having a relationship with someone and listening from someone with the relationship helps you better understand and internalize that message? The same thing applies with Krishna as well. And many of us might not be able to look at God, go to the temple, look at Him and feel His presence there. I mean, you might feel a good feeling, but how many of you can say that, you know what, when I go to the temple and see the deities over there, I actually feel like God is looking at me? Oh, really? Wow.
Last time we went to temple, she was the same thing she said to me.
Oh.
And it looks like he's looking at us.
Nice.
That's a really nice conception, actually, because how I heard it as well is we go to, some of us may go to the temple to, let's say, some people say take darshan of the deities, but another way to see it is we are the objects of being seen. So we're really going to the temple to receive darshan, not take darshan. And so, yeah, we're being examined and seen for who we are. And the nice thing is, no matter what, we have access to that love. It's just a matter of time for us to reciprocate with that love.
Right. And that relationship with Krishna is through Guru. And he's your friend along this whole spiritual process who's going to tell you, hey, you know what? These are the scriptures and these are the instructions or these are the helpful guides that I'm going to be giving you along the way so that you can understand Krishna better. So that's how the relationship with the Guru and the relationship with Krishna works.
All right, so we're going to transition to the next part. So, Girish, may I kindly ask you to pass out the beads? So, today we're going to do a guided meditation. Apologies, we're probably not going to have time for kirtan, but I hope the guided meditation will be just as satisfying for you. So, how many of us have done japa meditation before? Okay, some of us, well, you all have that experience by the end of it. So while that's getting passed out, I have mine. Okay, I can show. Where did my bag go? I was just gonna
Do you
show.
still want the thing, the positive affirmations? Or no? Positive affirmations.
Together. your eyes closed. You are not these bodies, but eternal souls. Unlimitedly happy and full of knowledge. Tune into that joy and feel its warmth spread throughout the limbs of your body. And look a little closer inside your heart and see that it's not just you in there, but there is also an expansion of, a spark of God that's inside all of us. See that beautiful shining form of Krishna that exists in all of us. And with your mind's eye, now see him standing right in front of you, smiling, seeing you exactly as you are, knowing everything about your past, your present, and your future, and completely accepting everything about you. Tuning into that love, let's chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra to him together. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. You can slowly open your eyes. And this is an experience that you can do on your own, anytime, anywhere, not restricted to any time, place, or situation. So tuning into this kind of love, this kind of joy, these kinds of sounds is available anytime you want. And even if you spend a few minutes a day on this, guaranteed your life will be transformed. I want to thank you all for your participation in this exercise, and I hope you found this worthwhile. And if you have any questions, because we're at time, we can just do informal discussions over dinner. So I hope that sound brings joy to you as well. If we could have a few volunteers to help with the serving. Also, I forgot to mention, Shambhavi, did you want to announce about... Yeah. So just a few announcements by our fearless leader, Shambhavi.
So the rally is coming, so it's on November 12th. So we're planning to have event on November 12th on Sunday, and it's at home and home. It's 70 centimeters. Like, you guys are invited. We will be making the posters and sending it out on the group. So watch out for that.
Yay! Okay, so if we could have a few volunteers to help with the serve out. I apologize, we don't have a dessert today, but the dinner is extra nice. It's